Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name's Mike, and I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission. So excited that everybody took time out of their busy schedules to join us for today's training session. Uh, all this month, we've been focusing on leadership, and we've been talking a lot about incident command. So today, we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the actual incident command system, sort of outline it for you, and show you how that works, how it expands and contracts, and how to implement the incident command system into your operations. So glad you're joining us today. I'm going to take you all through that, but before I get started with today's training, just a couple of administrative notes for you. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, we'll get you a certificate of participation for today's training. If you get cut off or you can't stick around for all that time, there is another way that you can earn that certificate. If you go to our website at www.africafiremission.org, up on the either the top of the screen or the side of the screen, depending on what kind of device you're using. There'll be some different tabs. If you go to that resources tab and look under training materials, lots of good information there. You'll find a registration link for these trainings. You'll also find a Google Drive that you'll be able to find recordings from today's session and all the other sessions that we've done so far this year. If you go there and answer a couple questions about the training, we can get you a certificate of participation as well. Lots of good resources on there. I encourage you to check those out. Also ask that you swing over to our YouTube channel. If you get on YouTube, search for Africa Fire Mission and give our channel a subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. We're trying to grow those numbers. When we hit 1,000 subscribers, that'll be able to allow us to do some other things and better serve you guys. So if you haven't done that, please do me a favor, head over to YouTube and subscribe to that YouTube channel for us. Just one other quick reminder, your screen name that you're using here, that is what shows up on that certificate I was talking about a little earlier. So if you need to make an adjustment to that to get your certificate looking right, please go ahead and do that. If you're sharing your screen with some other folks, that's great too. Just drop me an email. I'm going to drop something in the chat here where you can find my email address. And if you've got that, let me know who all's joining that meeting with you, and we'll get them their certificates for this as well. Okay? So, without further ado, let me get some things going here, and we'll get started with today's presentation. So we're taking a look today at this incident command system, right? And we've talked about it a bit throughout this month's training. There's been some folks that have mentioned it, okay, and we've sort of danced around a little bit. Uh, we haven't covered exactly what that incident command system is, right? So this is what we're going to look at today and try to see how this works, define some of the terms that are involved with it, and really get started. So a couple of objectives here that we'd like to accomplish with today's training. We're going to see how we can use this amongst different disciplines, and we can see how it's going to be flexible. We can use it for small incidents or large incidents. We're going to figure out what are these 5 major management functions, check those out, learn a little bit about those. Span of control is something that we've touched on a little bit. We'll dive a little bit deeper into what span of control is, how to apply that. We're going to look at the different position titles and what those mean, and how you can choose what titles you'd like to use, so that we make sure that everybody's on the same page. We'll talk about roles and responsibilities of both the incident commander and the command staff. We'll talk about the roles and responsibilities of the general staff, and then talk a little bit about the difference between those. And then how do we determine, when we expand or contract this organization? Okay. last little bit there, identify the facilities used. We'll talk a little bit about, staging areas and things like that. One of the things I want to point out as we get started here is that the incident command system in this training can be applied to the very smallest incident that you respond to and the very largest incident, which could be a nationwide incident, some kind of incident impacting the entire country that you're in. So we just have to be cautious that as we think about this, as we look at this class, that we're appropriately sizing it, right? So, what do we use the incident command system for? When should we be using this? The essential answer to this is that any time that we need to organize a group of people to do something, that's when we're going to use the incident command system, right? So here in the US, 80% of the firefighters in the US are volunteers. So as volunteers, they've got to raise their own money to to fund fire trucks and PPE and all that kind of stuff, right? So one of the things that's pretty typical in the area where I'm at is that they do these chicken barbecues, right? It's like we're selling Nyama Choma to the public, okay? So if you this fundraising event where we're cooking the chicken and serving it and selling it to the public, we can use the incident command system to do that. So you can use it for a fundraiser, for a planned event. You can use it for a car accident. You can use it for any type of event that you're involved with. We've got to organize a large number of people. We can utilize this incident command system. Okay. What is it? What's incident command? As I just said, it's a standardized on-scene, all-hazard incident management concept. So it doesn't matter what we're facing. It's just a means of managing what's going on. And it establishes that chain of command so people know who they're reporting to. It gives you this nice organized structure that you can integrate people in. So as your incident expands, as people arrive on the scene to help, how do they fit in? If you're responding to a fire call and the engine gets there first, and later on the chief fire officer arrives, how do they fit into that incident command system? This system is designed to find a way to piece them into that, okay, and keep everything organized. It's got a lot of flexibility, so you can start out very small, expand to very large, very flexible, useful system. It's based on business practices. So it's managing, an incident just like it is a business. And you'll see that when we get to some of the general staff and the command staff and some of those position titles, you'll sort of see, hey, this looks like it comes a little bit more from a business aspect than it does, from a emergency services aspect. And that's okay. This has been used for a long time. I know someone else had mentioned it in one of our earlier trainings this year. This ICS system has been in use for many, many years in the U.S. In the wildland firefighting world. They've been using, for bushfires, they've been using this incident command forever. And then after the terror attacks of September 11th, it really came to sort of our attention that agencies couldn't work together very well. Law enforcement had a difficult time communicating with fire, with EMS, and we needed to find a way where all those different agencies that came together could all work in an organized system, could all communicate well amongst each other, and all that sort of stuff. So that's where the focus came. The president introduced the National Incident Management System, NIMS, which is just utilizing ICS, the Incident Command System. There's lots of classes available for this. This class that I'm presenting to you, the material actually comes from the course ICS 100, which is the Introduction to the Incident Command System. And you can find a lot of information about those courses if you search for those online. What are some of the reasons that we did this, or the weaknesses that are addressed by this incident command system. What does this take care of? What is this going to fix for us? Okay, couple different things there. Lack of an orderly planning process. Do you have a plan on every incident that you go to? As we get into this, we'll talk about a written incident action plan. We don't need that for every incident, but as the incidents get large and more complex, those things will be important. What about communication? If is there poor communication? Who do I report to? Um, are we using different terminology? So if you've got an incident where you've got two different counties that are coming together to work on an incident, maybe we've got a large structural collapse and you've asked for some units from another county to come over to assist. Are you guys using that same common terminology so that everybody knows what you're talking about? Now, that's part of this command system here. Accountability, chain of command, appropriate levels of supervision. Those are all covered weaknesses that we can address with the incident command system. Uh, if there's no common way that we run an incident, again, this system helps us with that. It's a structured system that everybody can learn and know to work into. Uh, and then because we've got this, that again allows that interagency interactions where you've got other folks that are coming in. Maybe you've got flooding and you've got to do some rescues that are bringing in military resources. How does the military fall in to work with the police, to work with the EMS, the law enforcement? How do we get all those working together? Those are the weaknesses that are addressed. What does it actually do then? Okay, what is it designed to do? As I said before, this can expand and contract so we can fill out every position on a large incident of some of these charts that I'll show you later on. We can also use it on a very simple incident where you just have a single incident commander and you've got 3, 4 people working underneath of you. We can still, sort of use this system. So any type of incident, any size incident. Um, lets everybody from different agencies come together. Everybody works together in that common management structure. If it's done properly, uh, it gets rid of the problems that you may have with competition between who has control and who's in charge of what. It takes that away. Provides a lot of areas for logistical administrative support as well. If there's needs that you have logistically as the incident commander, you can assign someone to those positions to bring those resources, to locate those resources. Um, if you're working a structure fire, a building fire, and you need more water, and that's something that you contract with a private operator that runs water bowsers. You can assign someone to that logistics position to make those arrangements, make the contacts to call that private contractor to bring you that water bowser that you need. So helps with that effort. Uh, it also makes sure that we're not duplicating efforts. So everyone has a particular section that they're assigned to. They have a particular person that they report to. We've got a small span of control. So we don't have people trying to do the same thing at the same time. We're increasing our operational efficiency. As this says, this has been tested for, more than 30 years, probably, but probably closer to 40, 50 years now, that we've been utilizing this system in both the government and the private sectors here in the U.S. So it's been proven, it's proven its effectiveness time and time again. Some of the features of the incident command system. All right. Um, Incident facilities, these are our sort of staging areas. And as the incident builds, may come into place as sleeping areas, assignments, chow halls for feeding folks, all that sort of stuff. The span of control is a feature of it. Tells us how many people we can effectively manage, which also guides us in expanding or contracting that system, letting us know when we should start to build out. Uh, As we go through the roles and responsibilities of the different positions here in ICS, you'll see that there's some common responsibilities amongst everyone, and that helps everybody stay on the same page and keep the incident moving forward. Of course, there's the organization factor of it, where it keeps everything neatly organized and well planned out ahead of time. And then as we get to those larger incidents, we need that incident action plan. And incident action plans can be a written plan, or it can just be that plan that you've got in your head that I know, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to stretch lines to the fire. We're going to put water. If we need more water, this is where we're going to get it from, that sort of stuff. So here we're starting with some of these sort of flow charts that show you um, who reports to who and how these things work. And we'll touch into each one of these functions. Um, but this is your sort of initial build out. You've got an incident commander, and that's the one position that will fill on every single incident. You'll have an incident command on every single incident. And then whether you build out these other sections is based on your need. So as soon as we start to get more people on the scene, we should probably open up that operations section. The operations section being where all of the labor is going to be happening, right? Where the firefighters are at, putting the fire out, or making the rescue from the vehicle, or whatever function we're called to there. The other ones are sort of administration positions. You've got the planning, logistics, and finance administration. We'll talk about each one of those a little bit later. Those we're going to build out only if we need them. Uh, and that takes some of that burden away from that incident commander for figuring out, well, who's going to pay for this, or who's going to make the calls to bring us these extra resources, who's going to help me write the plan or get the plan together for what we're doing here on the scene. Okay. Span of control is an important topic here. So under this incident command system, the span of control is 3 to 7 people. Okay, so only we shouldn't have any more than 7 people reporting to an individual. So as we build out this incident command system, we're starting with we've got a building fire, and all you've got is the engine responding, and on that engine you've got 6 people. So the engine responds. One of those 6 people, when they arrive on scene, will become the incident commander. In this slide here, they're the supervisor, right? And then you've got the other 5 people on the crew in the engine are your resources. It's within your span of control. It's 5 people. We're good. We've got all of our positions filled. We've got incident command. We've got 5 people underneath of them. No need to expand. When another engine arrives, if it brings 6 more people, now it's time to start breaking things up a little bit. Maybe now we'll need to open that operations section. We can assign someone as the operations section chief, or we'll show you how you can break things down a little bit later. Maybe it's just a group leader or something like that. The key being we've got to maintain that span of control. When we've got 3, we're okay. As we get to 5 resources, we're still all right. When we get to that 7, where we're trying to manage more than 7 people underneath of us, now we need to start delegating some of that authority. Maybe we're going to break. We have 8 people that show up on the scene underneath of that incident commander. Maybe we're going to break those into 2 crews of 4 and put someone in charge of each one of those. Just then the crew leader is the one that reports to the incident commander. So you've got an incident commander, 2 crew leaders with 3 people underneath of there. Now we're managing. We've got 9 people on the scene, 8 of them working, 1 in incident command. Okay, so that's how that span of control works, and that's how we build out this command system. What do we call these people? Why are their position titles? We want to have this common standard with a position title. And by doing that, Everyone that arrives then will know what their job is or what that person's responsible for just because we've been using these standard terms. Um, Distinct titles allow for people filling the positions with the most qualified individuals. And this is a really interesting concept uh, about the incident command system is that as you fill these positions, these incident command is not based on rank. Incident command is based on qualifications, the incident command system. So when you arrive on the scene of an incident, the person to take that incident command position is not the highest ranked person there, but the most qualified person to hold that position. That may not be your chief fire officer. It may be someone different on each type of call. There may be somebody who has more experience working with road traffic incidents than they do with building fires. So maybe that's who fills that position. So as we use these titles, we're not using them as a chief fire officer, a captain, lieutenant, these different titles. We're calling it what it is to get the most qualified person in there. All right. When we're also looking for additional resources from outside of our organization, these position titles are helpful as well because folks know what we're looking for when I call for a strike team or a task force or something like that. So, what are these different components? Here's a little bit of a breakdown, and I think we can touch on some of these here on our next slide. But we've got section, division, group, branch, task force, strike team, single resource. That is organized from your sort of least number of people underneath of you is at the bottom, the most people above you listed at the top there. Your sections, your section chiefs, those are going to be the ones that are doing operations, logistics, planning, finance administration. That's the section chief. That's where we use that. Then we break down the different titles here. And again, you'll be able to find this. I'm going to drop these slides into that Google Drive folder that I was talking about that you can find from our webpage. And if you give me just a second here, I'm going to drop something in the chat. Here we go. There's a link here in the chat as well. After this is over, I'll drop these slides in there so you guys can get back into this and review this a little bit. But here we go. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up to the top. Single resources, like we talked about, this is your individual or a piece of equipment and the person running it. It could be a crew or a team of individuals. So, as we start out on that incident with just the engine arriving, each person on that is a single resource. Um, as we move to larger incidents, that whole engine with those people inside may be considered that single resource. So it depends what you're asking for. You'll have to specify that. As we start to group resources together and they need a leader, we call that a strike team. A strike team are resources, they're all the same type. So you could have a strike team of fire engines, um, but that wouldn't include EMS, right? A strike team would be just a specific type, so just fire equipment, sometimes very specialized, only engines compared to Bowsers or ladders or different things like that, right? Strike team, they're all common. If we want to mix some different resources together, so we want to call for both fire and EMS working together, that we call a task force. So a task force is a bunch of different types of resources that are mixed together that then go and report to a single leader. So you'll have a strike team leader, then a couple of different strike teams of different types can combine as a task force. That task force will have a team leader. Then when we start to expand, then we can expand into what we call branches. Branches are used when we've got too many divisions or groups. So a group could be a functional area where a group is just your firefighting in the incident. So we've got we've got some sort of a weather disaster that has caused some structures to collapse, started some fires, and there's flooding. Okay, so we're going to have different groups working there. When we have too many groups working together, um, then we may need to branch out into the branches, right? So then we've got a branch supervisor doing those different groups. Or the term divisions, typically we do that. This describes it as geographically. If we come back to our simple building fire, if we're at a building fire with multiple stories to it, we label those as division 1, 2, 3, 4, as many as there are high. You can assign a division supervisor to that. And that division supervisor is in charge of all of the operations on a specific floor in that high rise that you're working. So those are the different breakdowns. Divisions a little bit sort of by location. Groups are sort of the functions of the operation. Branches could be where we have multiple, multiple divisions. We've already assigned. If you're working a 10-story building and you've got enough people there that you've got crews on every floor working, and a division supervisor for every one of those floors, then you're going to need a branch, because if you've got 10 stories, you've got all those people working, exceeding our span of control. So we're building out that incident command structure. So that's our span of control and how we expand through those. Let's take a step back for a moment and look at the incident commander. This is the one role we're going to have in every incident, every time we use the system. What are they going to do? Well, the incident commander, they've got that overall responsibility for managing the incident. If we change those positions because someone that's more qualified has arrived on scene, someone else wants to take over the incident, they've got to be fully briefed. In this example, it says should have a written delegation of authority. Again, remember that this is for all incidents, regardless of the size. So, do we need a written delegation of authority for our simple incidents? No, but it is saying as if you're working this natural disaster that is hit multiple counties and you're in charge of that, there should probably be something in writing saying the government's authorized, this person to serve as our incident commander or something like that. And then you assign some folks to that incident commander, and people that they assign underneath of them, they have that delegated authority of their assigned positions. So there shouldn't be any question as to, does this person, let's say we're taking those outside resources. We've got a building fire and I need a private individual to bring me a water bowser so we can keep fighting this fire. If I assign someone to the logistics position, we don't have to question whether they have the authority to get that resource. They do. I've given them the logistics position that assigns them the authority to carry out that role. Okay. And then as I mentioned, right, only position that's filled on every incident is that incident commander. Some other responsibilities, we've got that overall command and control, which also means, the buck stops with them, right? So they're responsible for everything that takes place on that incident scene. There's a lot of responsibility and liability on that incident commander. They've got to ensure that everyone's safe. Maybe that means they're going to assign a safety officer to watch that for them. They're there to protect the health and safety of the public, of the environment, and to mitigate whatever that incident is that's going on. They also have to be in control and be sure that information is provided to the people working on the scene, what they know, and also with any external stakeholders, right? Maybe you got to let the public know what's going on, so that they can avoid the area or whatever. So responsible for all of this doesn't mean they have to do it themselves, but they're responsible for it. And then they're going to maintain a liaison with the other agencies. So making sure somebody's talking with the police to make sure that they're doing If we're talking natural disaster in the military is there, making sure there's somebody working with the military so we're not duplicating efforts so that we're all focused and doing what we need to together. So what does that look like as we start to expand these things out? And here's where we've got the command staff and the general staff. Okay, so command staff are going to be individuals that are assigned to help me out. If I'm the incident commander, I need somebody to help me out. So, like we talked about from that last slide, you're responsible for putting information out, let's say to the public. I need you to avoid this area. There's been a building collapse in the center of the city. We need to close a couple blocks down and keep people away. Who's going to do that? I'm responsible as the incident commander. I'm responsible to do that, but I can assign someone as the public information officer to go do that for me. I'm responsible for the safety of everybody on scene, but I can assign someone as the safety officer. Who needs to coordinate with outside agencies? That's my liaison. I assign all those different things. And then we'll talk about some of these a little bit later here. Underneath of that expansion, and you see how our flow chart is looking there. We've got our incident commander, and you're just following those lines. So wherever you land on this chart, you follow the line up to the top. Underneath of that incident command, now we've got our general staff. We showed those before: operations, planning, logistics, finance, and admin. Okay. So let's look a little bit closer here. Command staff, we mentioned these. PIO, or your public information officer, safety officer, liaison. What are the different responsibilities here? PIO, public information officer. We're going to be smart about who we choose to do this. The person that does this, we want them to be able to speak fluently in whatever language we're going to utilize to put out our information. You want someone that can think on their feet and that can answer questions, or knows enough to know if they're asked a question and they don't know the answer, somebody that's responsible enough to say, I don't have that information for you right now, but I'm going to find it and I'll get back to you when I do. Okay. They're going to relay information about the media to the incident commander, let them know this is what we're going to be releasing, information we're going to be releasing to the public. The newspaper's here, the podcaster is here, the television reporter is here, whatever, right? That PIO is going to serve as the primary contact. Anybody that needs any information, really, whether it's government officials, the media, whoever's looking for information, it all goes through that one person. And then part of this system too, that helps manage the different weaknesses that may be out there, is that you don't have your firefighter who's running the hose isn't giving information out to people that are asking. Anybody, it passes that responsibility. It makes it great for everybody that's on the scene. If somebody, I need to ask you some questions, say, wow, I so and so is our is our public information officer, go talk to them. Serves the external audience, also provides that information to people on the scene as they need it. They may have to work with some of the other general staff. They may need to get information from finance administration, from logistics, planning, whatever. They may need to on a large incident, they may need some people to help them, so they can add some public information staff underneath them if necessary. And then their responsibility is to dig around and get the information that's needed about the incident to go to the media or to go to the community or government or whoever needs to know, right? So that's your public information officer. Safety officer, their responsibilities, I mean, again, the position titles, the great thing about using these position titles, it's pretty clear. Everyone should know what the safety officer does. The safety officer is there to minimize risk, advise command on safety issues, make sure everybody that's on the scene is safe. And most of the time, that safety officer is granted the authority to stop any actions that are taking place that they deem to be unsafe. So great position to have. expand on some of these incidents. Our last command staff is that liaison. This is the person that's going to work with the outside agencies to get support, that are going to see what resources they may need or what's available. They're going to relay that information, and they may need to pass that information down along into the general staff as they're working at the planning and logistics. So they're sort of operating together, coordinating things as resources are coming in. Okay. We'll switch over here to the general staff, and we're going to talk about these individually. And before we get to that, so these folks are section chiefs. Okay, so when you assign someone to these sections, their title will be chief. So you have your incident command, and then you'll have, if you need to expand these, you'll have an operations section chief, planning section chief, logistics section chief, finance administration section chief. Does the person need to be have their position title every day as chief? No. You could assign a firefighter as your logistics section chief, and during the incident, that's going to be their title. Okay, so that's how that works. All right. How do we delegate when they need more help? Underneath of them, how do we break down stuff, people working underneath of that section chief? This is how we're going to do that here. You can use position titles of deputy, so the deputy operations section chief. If you've got to break it down because you've got so many folks working underneath of you, you can also use titles of team leader, or maybe you just have an individual resource there where those individual resources are just reporting back to the operations section chief on a small incident. That's okay too. So some of that terminology of deputies or team leaders for a little bit larger group, or maybe a deputy is going to be responsible for multiple team leaders, team leader responsible for multiple individual resources. So you can see how those things build. Talking about specific of these general staff, what does the operations section chief do? They're managing this operations section. This is the hands-on work. They're doing the strategies and the tactics. They're trying to develop those strategies and tactics. They're putting those out there. They're ensuring that the incident action plan, that overall plan, is getting carried out. Okay. They're the ones doing the hands-on stuff, and of course, they got to work pretty closely with the other members of the command staff and general staff to make sure that everything's working. As we build that out and expand that, I don't want you to get stuck on these titles. This is just an example. But if you're looking at a major incident, maybe you need to deal with traffic. So you've got somebody who's responsible for transportation. Okay, maybe you're going to break it up into engineering because it's a structural collapse and you need somebody to help you with engineering some shoring and things like that to stabilize the structure. Mass casualty incident, you may have somebody there, mass care. If you've got a weather-related incident that's collapsed buildings, flooding, and fire all together, you might have a fire strike team leader, water rescue strike team leader, mass care specialist. So that's how you're going to start breaking those things down and assign them those titles that everybody will understand what their responsibility is. Planning section chief. What's the planning section chief doing? Well, they're taking all the information that's going. They're trying to develop that written plan. Okay, they're trying to figure out what we're going to do here. All of the plans. On a small building fire, we don't need this planning section chief. If we have an entire block of buildings on fire, maybe we're going to need that, right? If we've got a natural disaster, certainly we're going to need this. So this is the different items that they're going to do. They're going to develop that incident action plan based on data and then work with the other command and general staff to be sure that those plans are being carried out. What's that incident action plan? It's the who, what, when, where, why, how type things, right? Well, not the why. We're going to take the why out because there's no time for that on the incident. but it's the what, where, when, who, how. What do we want to do? Where are we going to put our people? Or where are we going to do the action at? When are we going to do it? When are we going to start operations? Who's going to be the responsible? Who's going to be our leaders? How do we talk to each other? What do we do if somebody's injured? All these different things covered in that incident action plan. If you get online and you search for incident action plans, there's actually a lot of different templates out there that are already set up where you can just start to fill those things in. There's a standardized form in the incident command system. Search for incident command system incident action plan, and you can find some of that stuff. Logistics section chief. Who's this guy or gal? What are they doing? This is your this is your this is your go find me stuff. Um, this is the I need resources. This is somebody that's going to go find those resources and provide those resources. They're going to work on contracts if that's necessary, but any different resources that we need, this is the person that's going to locate those resources, call them in, bring them in to work with us. They have a role in that incident action plan as well, and it's some of those common responsibilities that I talked about in the beginning that you're seeing through some of these roles. And then working sort of hand in hand with that logistics, certainly on large incidents. Most incidents, you don't really need this, but there's that finance and administration section chief. What are those folks doing? If we've got to negotiate a contract, that's them. If it's a major incident where you've got to keep track of timesheets for different agencies as they come in, tracking what this incident's costing, if there's different claims for equipment damage or things like that, this is all of the desk work, right? This is the person, that's going to find a quiet place, sit at the desk, and push the pencil and work out the paperwork. That's your finance administration. They've also got a hold of those purse strings to make sure that folks are getting paid for what they need to as they go through this. So there we've touched on all of our general staff, on all of our command staff. We're looking at how do we communicate within the incident command system. Set up your system, however, but we found that it's critical that you could communicate throughout this system and who you report to. This was very apparent to us during when the World Trade Centers were attacked. Police couldn't talk to fire. They just couldn't coordinate things together. It led to sort of that large loss of life. So how do we rectify this? We're going to use standard common terminology. We don't want to use jargon or sometimes even communicating. If I say, hey, grab your BAs, I think most of us understand that I'm referring to a breathing apparatus. But here in the US, if I say BA, folks are going to look at me a little weird. Here we use the full SCBA, right? SCBA. If I just say BA, they won't necessarily understand. So whatever your common terminology is that you're using in your area, use that. Maybe it's better to say grab your breathing apparatus than it is to just say BA. Jargon is a term for those very specific words that they don't make sense to anybody. If a regular private citizen heard you use that term, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. We don't want to use that type of language. Encourage you to use these standard position titles that we've covered here. And when we talk about facilities, some of those facility names, so everybody knows what we're talking about. And then in this incident command system, as you expand in these large incidents, the wildfires that are going on in California right now are utilizing this system. There's written communication plans, there's written med plans, there's written incident action plans. So there'll be even a written command. So when you show up on scene, I can hand someone a packet of papers that says, here's the communications plan. It tells you what radio frequencies you're on, who's in charge, who to contact, and all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, within the ICS system, because we're building with that span of control and everybody's reporting up to their individual supervisors, that's the flow path for communications from the guy on the ground doing the work all the way up through to the incident commander. Want to be sure that we're using some good discipline when we're looking at these communication, right? So what is that? If you're on the phone, if you're on the radio, you're using it. You're clear, concise, short. Making sure you're not wasting anybody's time while you're talking on the radio or on the phone. Essential traffic only with those communications. Be sure that they're secure if necessary. If there's security concerns, are you communicating somehow that other people can hear that could cause a safety issue? And then here it says use plain English in all communications. You can use that, read that however you'd like to whatever language you're using. Use plain Swahili, use plain Chichewa, whatever you're talking about, but say what you want. Don't use special terminology. Here in the US, they used to use 10 codes. 10-4 meant okay to most people, right? And 10-21 meant on scene. And, but it was different. Sometimes it was different between different agencies. So those 10 codes meant different things depending on where you were at. We got rid of those. We said you use plain English. You use plain language, whatever. Say what you mean, say what you need. Um, Facilities, okay, different incident facilities. So these are sort of locations on the incident. What do we call them? What do they mean? Where are they at? Incident command post is the biggest one. It's where anybody can find the incident commander. It's where they're overseeing it from. Um, Generally speaking, we want your incident commander to stay in one spot at that incident command post. I have tons of experience as an incident commander, as a chief fire officer, and I don't like to stay in one spot. On the smaller incidents, sometimes I'm moving around to see what's going on. Um, so try to stay in that one spot, but understand on smaller incidents, maybe we don't necessarily have to have that incident command post, but everybody should have a good idea of where you're at the time. Staging areas, another important thing. As we're calling for more resources, we need a place to put them where when they arrive on scene, they're not just going to work doing whatever they think they should do. Everyone should report to that staging area. And from there, that staging area, they receive their assignments and go out and do the work. For us here in the US, we've got a staging area on all of our fires, certainly because we're bringing other companies to come in and help us out. So staging areas, incident command posts are used all the time. The last three here, base, camp, helibase, major incidents, major incidents here is what we're talking about. Um, uh, you can see the terms there. This is if people are living at the scene for extended periods of time, like these big wildfires out in California and that sort of thing. Um, Chances of using those for most of your incidents pretty small. There's the terminology. We'll kind of leave it at that. Um, Roles and authorities, for everyone that arrives on a scene, what do you do? What's your authority, right? Um, you should be reviewing your assignment, whatever it is. Be sure that you understand what your decision-making authority is, how you fall into this chain of command. Understand how do you contact um, our own agency. So if you're responding to a different county, how do you report back to them? How can you contact them? Do you have the authority to purchase anything or what those procedures may be if you need to purchase something? How are you going to get fed? How are you going to get a roof over your head on a major incident? You've got to figure those things out as you get there using the incident command system, the different resources to make sure that you're taken care of. So those are some of your sort of individual roles that you need to be thinking about as you arrive on an incident. Check in at the incident. is important. Again, this is going to be for a major incident. You're not going to set up a check-in when it's only a single engine go into an incident. You're not going to have that. But at a major incident, you may have a check-in location as you arrive on scene. You're reporting there so they know what resources have arrived. They're going to tell you where the staging area is at, going to provide emergency contacts, going to get you set up for how you're going to get paid if you're coming in as a single resource or something like that. Um, how are you going to fit into the demobilization, or how to, when we break down these major incidents? So that's a check-in. Um, Again, just a major incident that you may need that, but we want you to be familiar with this, just to be a better, well-rounded individual, right? To know all this sort of stuff. Initial incident briefings. This is important, and this you can use even on your smaller incidents. Um, as a new group of people arrive to help, they need to receive that briefing. That can be just a quick face-to-face communication there. But here's the different topics, you know, and again, there's these briefing checklists. You can find these things online. This just names some of the stuff, what's the situation, what are your responsibilities going to be, who are you working with, where are you working, here's where you're going to get food, or here's where you bunk down at night at the end of your shift. Here's how you get the stuff that you need. Here's your work shift. Uh, here's what you need. This is your required PPE for the incident. This is what we're going to do. You're doing these safety things. There's a down to power line over there, so stay away from that area. Whatever. You need a BA because we've got a hazardous gas leaking over here. That sort of stuff in that initial incident briefing. Record keeping. How do we keep records? Again, if you search for incident command system and record keeping, you can find some different forms to use for this. If you're just, writing up the incident on your own, some best practices here. Print or type everything out neatly. This is funny to me. It says to enter the dates by month, day, year. Of course, for you guys, that's not the common way that you're used to. It's day, month, year, typically for a lot of you guys. So whatever format is standard where you're from, that's why it's written this way for sort of an American audience, right? Enter the time and date on all of your records or forms. Use your local time zone. Here in the US, there's 4 or 5 time zones as you stretch across the continent, or the country. So, use the local time zone. That may not apply, to you guys. Fill in all the blanks on the form. If there's nothing that needs to be written in, write that NA in the form, not applicable, so that we know that you just didn't miss it. And then, if you're a section chief or higher in a big incident, you shouldn't be doing this stuff yourself. You should have somebody keeping those logs for you, or assign a scribe to you. The last topic we want to touch on here, and again, this is just for those major incidents, incident demobilization. In the big picture, it's for major incidents, but we can pull this back down to our small single incidences. How are we going to wrap things up and get out of here? Okay, so that's what demobilization is. It's going home. It's getting everything packed up, heading back. How do we do that? Who goes first? That sort of stuff. How do we collect our own stuff if somebody was, outside resources came in and we're using our stuff? How do we get that back? So that's your incident demobilization. Be sure all your work assignments have been completed. As people are coming in, brief replacements. Follow any, check out procedures the same way that you checked into to this big incident. How do you check back out? And that can be as simple as you're getting on the engine. Is everybody that came with us still here? right? Do we have everybody before we head back to the station? Um, put all the equipment back together, provide some contact information if you need to follow up with the property owner or the victims or something like that. Be sure that contact information is exchanged. And then part of that demobilization also happens when you get back to the fire station, where you're writing up your incident reports, critiques, evaluations, that sort of stuff. Payment, payroll, all that kind of things. That's all part of that demobilization. Um, we're coming up right here to the top of the hour. Looks like I timed this pretty perfectly here. We're at the conclusion. We're at our objective review. Did we learn everything that we set out to in the beginning? I think we did. We touched on all these topics. We talked about facilities. We talked about expanding and contracting. We described the roles. Uh, I think we did well. I think we've got through everything here. So let me end this screen sharing here. Uh, Actually, hold on a second. Let me go back to that for just one more moment. I want to get some questions, but we're trying out. We've got our new sort of format for some of our in-person presentations. I'm trying out today. So let me just conclude here with our end slide here. There's a QR code. If you grab a screenshot of that, that's going to take you to that Google Drive folder that I was talking about, where you'll be able to find in a folder for additional materials. I'll drop these slides in there as a PDF, and you'll be able to find the recording of today's training, so you can go back and listen to it or share it. Take this and play this video for the folks at your fire brigade that weren't here for today. Check things out. So I'm gonna open up the floor here. Let me see. How are we doing on time? All right, we're gonna take questions, but I am going to wrap up sort of the formal portion of this training with just a big thank you to you guys for joining us today. Let me drop in the chat here a link if you'd like to evaluate today's class for us. There's a link where you can give us some feedback on today's class. Thank you all for being here. We do not take for granted the fact that you're spending your time and your bundles, your data to get here and be with us, that you're doing this to serve your community. We're super appreciative of that. We don't take you all for granted. I invite you all to stick around. We're going to transition into our tea time, where we can do some question and answer and a little bit of networking. So please stick around for that if you've got the time. A big thank you. We've got plenty of seats here. Share that registration link with anybody else that you think might be interested in today's training. And please join us again here next week. Thanks, everyone.